Hi guys, welcome back to Sim Racing on the Game of Muscle YouTube channel. In this video we're going to go through the graphics settings in Raceroom Racing Experience and show you how to set up Raceroom Racing Experience and what the individual graphics settings do to get the most out of the game for VR. Before you launch the game, if you want to launch into VR, you need to make sure that you go to the custom launch options and add dash VR and then a number value for how much super sampling you want to run. The graphics on the screen give you a good baseline. We tend to run at 2.0. Once you've done that and you load the game up, it should load up into your VR space and then you can go to these settings. In this case, to record this video, I'm doing this setup in non-VR, in 2D, just to make it easier for me to jump between the two, but it should pretty much be exactly the same. The main thing is we're just going to explain the different settings and what they do so you can decide if your computer is fast enough to make use of them. So once you're in the actual menu screen, you've loaded the game up, you want to click on the little cogs, and then you want to go to video settings, and then you want to go to custom settings. So of these settings, we'll go through them one by one and explain what they do. It's an exciting time here at Game of Muscle Videos. So, toggle mirrors, yes, by all means have that turned on. Track detail. Now this has quite a big impact on your frame rate performance. Low, the tracks look a bit bland and empty, and high they look really nice with lots of things going on. I would say for VR, it's probably better to be conservative and just put it on low and, you know, see what you get from it. But start off with it on low. Car LOD distance settings. For VR, you might as well put that on low again, because the VR headset, you can't see the cars that far into the distance in that much detail anyway, because of the resolution of the screen. So just put that on low. You probably won't notice any difference. Particle detail, again, low. It doesn't make a huge difference in VR because the headset itself isn't that detailed when it comes to raw resolution. Tyre marks you can keep on, they're not that demanding, and it's nice to have skid marks on the road so you know where to brake. If you're seeing other people skid in front of you, maybe you're new to a track, or where you maybe skidded off the track last time, you can use it as a reference to avoid making the same mistake. Specular. Not particularly high demanding on the graphics card, so you can just leave that on. I leave it on mine, don't make much difference. You get a nice little bit of specular lighting. Car reflection quality can be quite demanding and quite heavy on performance. Also, again, VR, you probably won't notice it so much having it on high, so low is probably a good option there. We put it on low. Track animations, that's all the people waving flags and stuff. I like to have that on. I don't think it's that demanding on your computer. It's normally the type of thing that's more demanding on the CPU than it is the GPU. I leave it on because you like having, it's nice feeling that you're at an active event, and when you look around in VR and you see people waving stuff. But of course, that's totally up to your personal preference. Shadows can be quite demanding on your graphics card, and if you've got a slower system or slower graphics card, you'll probably want to put this on off or lowest. That said, if you do put it on off, obviously you've got no shadows and it looks like the cars are floating around like hovercraft, so it really does damage immersion and the believability of things. Lowest as well, you tend to get a lot of the shadows are a bit ill-defined, and the actual car shadows aren't so good. You know, if you've got a slow system, you might have to put it on off or lowest. I found low is sort of the best acceptable sort of performance to quality ratio before you start really diminishing the quality. If you've got a good system, turn it up by all means, but bear in mind that is one of those settings that can be quite demanding on your computer. Car shadows, definitely have that turned on. Again, it's just stuff that removes the effect of cars looking like they're hovercrafts, not actually connected to the road. Surprisingly, how important shadows are when it comes to making things feel as if they're actually on a surface. Contact shadows, you can turn these down. I don't think this makes too much difference to performance having this high, but I haven't actually tested this setting, so that might be one you want to put low to start with and try turning it up afterwards. But I would say, in general, shadows when it comes to games are something that are quite demanding. So turn that down. I'll leave it on 10. Shadow split. I don't know what shadow split is, so you might want to just fiddle with that and just turn it off for now. Multi-sampling, again, this is AA, so if you've got a fast system, turn AA up, and it will remove jaggers. It will make things look a lot more sort of crisp and clear on the edges, but it is a very heavy setting on your processor, especially if you're already running super sampling when you launch the game. As I say, by putting that Dash VR launches it in the VR mode, but the number you've got, the 2.0, 1.0, anything above 1.0 is using super sampling. And super sampling itself is a form, or does achieve anti-aliasing, and it's the most expensive way of doing anti-aliasing. So if you've got 2.0, which is essentially rendering the game at twice resolution, and then you're putting normal AA on top of that, it's very demanding. You might probably want to just try at 2.0 in the launch settings and then have no AA and just see how well it runs. If you do get away with it running well on different tracks with lots of cars, and it's worth also pointing out, some tracks are more demanding than others, and some races, depending on how many cars are actually in it, will be more demanding than others. If you manage to get the good 90 FPS at most times, if not all the time, with no AA, you might want to have a little look with it on two times AA and see if you can get away with that. But probably for most people, the super sampling will be enough, and AA will just push the Raceroom over the edge for them. FXAA you don't want on in VR generally. FXAA is basically a faked anti-aliasing that uses an effect on the graphics card to I guess it dithers the edges of the objects in the game, but it's applied over the top of the whole image. It's really hard to explain, but basically it's a fake AA. The problem is with it, in VR, it tends to shimmer a little bit and it doesn't quite look right, and it tends to remove focus. It makes things look a little bit blurred. It's as if you're looking through slightly out of focus camera lens at times, and in VR it just doesn't really work well. So I tend to put FXAA off in any VR game that I'm playing. Bloom, by all means turn that on. I guess personal preference. It's not particularly demanding, Bloom, so you can choose to have that on or off. It shouldn't affect performance too much. Depth of field should be off by default in VR anyway, so I won't worry about that. But if it's in any other game, you generally always want depth of field set to off in VR. Motion blur should be off, and it should be off by default in VR as well. And obviously motion blur quality doesn't matter because it's turned off. Light shafts, personal preference. I don't think it has, again, that much effect on performance if you have it on or off. If you've got a newish graphics card, anything above 1060 or one of the newer ATR graphics cards shouldn't make any difference. Personal preference, I quite like it on. You might want to turn it off. Up to you. Lens effects, probably want to have that turned off in VR. Again, personal preference, not particularly demanding in terms of performance either way. Track texture quality, put this all the way up. Whack textures up at all opportunities in any game, any VR game. I would always say turn the textures to the highest possible. With modern graphics cards, anything, as I say, above even like a 970, or especially anything in the 10 series, any graphics card that came out in the last year, texture resolution isn't particularly costly on the graphics card and shouldn't affect frame rate. So just whack it up. Maybe as a last resort, if you are still getting frame rate issues, turn it down. But for the most part, always put the textures on the highest or near highest settings when at any opportunity, because as I say, it generally doesn't have that much of effect on performance. Car texture quality, again, just whack it up. Why not? And also in VR, you notice the textures, especially with super sampling. It's nice having crisp textures there. It makes things look more believable. It just makes everything look nice. So you might as well whack it up. Rear view mirror quality in VR, this is quite a performance hog. Again, reflections, shadows, and shader and lighting quality tend to be things that really affect performance. I'd put it on low, but it does look terrible. So if you're getting away with it on low and you're happy with the other settings, you can then start moving it up. But I'd keep it on low, and just use your imagination for the block of car that's approaching you. Imagine them as a Lego brick vehicle that's behind you. It might make you feel a little bit more comfortable that way before you get rear-ended by someone online at T1 Monza. Shader quality, this can have quite a high impact on performance. The game does look a lot nicer on high. You'll notice that the lighting seems a lot nicer. The way the lighting interacts with the objects of the game, the cars and the road surface, is a lot nicer on high. But it is a big hog on performance, so you might want to start with it on low again, and then gradually move it up, depending on if you can always get that 90 FPS on even the most demanding of tracks. Corner markers, turn them off because it's absurd. You don't have these ridiculous corner markers in real life, so turn them off. Ignore that. There are breakpoints on the actual circuits, and you can use your imagination for actual breakpoints. Look at bits of the road, so you don't need these ridiculous corner markers on. Visible cars, strangely, doesn't tend to have that much of an impact on performance. I think that's because Raceroom is based on the G-Motor engine, and if you've played R-Factor 1, R-Factor 2, Automobilista, or any game that was originally based on G-Motor, one of the things that engine does really well is load hundreds of cars, so I think up to 50 cars, and the performance, the frame rate isn't generally affected by the number of cars that much, so you might want to turn it down a little bit, but I've just left this whacked up and I'm perfectly happy with it. Opponent cockpits, turn that off. You do not need opponent cockpits in VR. And there you go. That's the graphic settings. All the graphic settings that you could possibly need to do, hopefully with an explanation for what each one does. Don't forget to click apply once you have done those settings. And if you've not loaded into the game and you're on the menu, I don't think you need to restart the game for them to apply. So you can quit back to the menu, adjust stuff, and go back to the game to see what effect these things have had. What I would say though, as I was saying earlier, it really does depend on the track as to how it will affect your frame rate, with some tracks obviously being more demanding than others. So when you are tweaking your settings, I'd load up quite a complicated track, or a track that's got a big variation in details. I think Bathurst might be a good circuit for that. Trying to think of any others. Nürburgring GP might be a good circuit as well. But if you try and think of a track that's got a large track, or a track that has a lot of stuff on it, that will be a good track to load up with AI in virtual reality. Try these settings, see if you get the performance from it. If you do, then you can up the settings by all means in the order of what we've said. Going over this, or based off what you like, and then you should be happy when it comes to online racing or doing single player racing in VR without getting too many drops and stutters. But there you go, that is the graphic settings in Raceroom Racing Experience explained. I hope that helps you guys get into it, and I hope that helps you get the most out of it for virtual reality. Don't forget to click the subscribe button if you enjoyed this or found it useful. Don't forget to like it as well, and if you have any questions or anything you're unsure about, just drop it in the comments and I will normally answer within well, pretty much immediately, because we've got our phone, and I enjoy getting beeped on my phone and replying to people. So with that said and done, thanks for watching this, and I'll see you guys in the next video we do. Hopefully it'll be a little bit more exciting than a setup video. Until then, goodbye everybody.